return to the room?
My husband was telling me that his kids.
You know I do, yeah. We need more people to burn out.
And he's like,
Are we all right? All right, awesome. So thank you all, everyone, for taking that time to chat with each other, to reflect back what you heard, how this has impacted you, and any questions that may have come up. So let's just go ahead and open it up. We got 20 minutes together to share, opening it up and just sharing kind of what came up for you all. For folks who are in our Zoom, we can hear you, so if our team, our Zoom moderators have anyone who'd like to go, please do raise your hand and we'll make sure that we toggle back and forth. So why don't we go ahead and start? We'll start here at the table, and then we'll go back and forth. So we'll start with one table, and then we'll open it up to our Zoom participants, and then I'll go to the second table and open it up to our Zoom participants. So I'm going to go right here at table one. What came up with you all, for you all? Anybody want to come and share at the microphone?
Some stuff that came up for us is that we need like good representation in the state house, but also like probably a new governor, and that it's good to have like a solid renewable like energy plan, and like hopefully New Hampshire can get one because we don't have one. Something about cap agencies, I'm sorry, these are just notes, they're not sentences, and breaking monopolies.
Thank you so much, Erica. Were there any questions that came up for folks that folks wanted answered?
I do have a question for Dan. I'm sorry to put you on the spot, but I just wondered, as you know, we have solar panels that my husband and I, we bought them. And we installed them, but now since 3 months ago, our system broke because the inverter got damaged, and we can't even find the part. So for 3 months in a row, we went from like the first bill really high, it was 350, and then the second bill went up, it was 420, and then last week we paid $498 for electricity, because we can't find the part to fix our solar system. And I just wonder if we install it ourselves, is any way, do you know, is any way that we can like try to find the part, or if you know we qualify to get a new solar panels installed in our house, since we bought them, we didn't get it by credit. So I don't know, is any assistance or any way we can like get our system either fixed or new solar panels installed?
Thank you for that question, Maria. I'm so sorry to hear that. That is very frustrating, especially as rates are spiking. So for our company, I know we didn't install your system. We naturally provide warranty coverage and have a rapidly growing service department that we receive many requests from owners of systems that we didn't install, in addition to, of course, serving the ones we did. So I'll maybe make a little public service announcement. We are desperately trying to hire and train more electricians. The demand is so great, and we have actually a new campaign that we call Electricians Will Save the World, because if we are going to have a prayer of maintaining a livable climate, literally preserving the habitability of our planet for future generations, including these little ones, we need to much more rapidly deploy clean energy, as well as meet the needs of maintaining systems like yours, Maria. So that's a sort of backward, long-winded way of saying we have a service team and could try to fix your inverter. It should be a pretty simple process. We install thousands of inverters and hundreds of thousands of solar panels, so it's certainly been done before. But we won't be able to get there tomorrow or probably next week because the demand, again, is just so high. Happy to chat with you directly. Hopefully your installer has a workmanship warranty, and warranties on inverters are typically 10 to 12, sometimes 15 years. On solar panels, they're 25 years. So it certainly should be covered, but I know time is money in this case, so I hope that you can get them out, and if not, we certainly want to try and help you. We have a team that can do it, and we can put it in the queue and try to get to you as soon as possible. Thanks for your question.
Thank you so much, Dan, and thanks for that question, Maria. Any other questions from group 1? All right. So before we go to group 2 and 3 and 4, just very quickly to our Zoom family here, are there any questions or reflections that folks came up with that they'd like to share?
Coming to group 2? Or anybody on Zoom?
Anybody on the Zoom? I'm not sure how many groups you all had. So if there was a group 1, then let's go with group 1 on Zoom.
Thanks. Hi, I'm Karen Morris, I use she, her pronouns, and I'm the Executive Director for Rights and Democracy. So our group actually didn't have many questions. We got into a lengthy conversation about why the rate hikes are at the levels they are, and the ability to import and export oil and natural gas, and its impacts on the market. We did hear some powerful narratives around how rates have doubled in cases for some families, tripled in others, and it has had some serious impact on most of the people in the room. Some have felt that had recognized the rate hikes, but they didn't impact them positively or negatively necessarily, but for some others it's really been very daunting for them. So thank you for sharing the space.
Thank you so much, Kaya. All right, so let's then, if there's nothing more from group 1, all right, then we'll toss it over to group 2. So group 2, any reflections or questions here in person? Anything that folks would like to share? Yeah?
So I think we're the question group. And because we have 6 different questions, we're going to do one.
One is that, yeah. Give folks a chance to answer.
So I think this one's possibly for Dawn. Why is New Hampshire so far behind?
How much time you got?
Briefly.
I do think it's a matter of the public policy that trickles down from the folks that you elect to be the chief executive of the state and to be members of the general court. All of the authority that the Public Utilities Commission has is authority that is delegated to it by the legislature. So it is an administrative agency. It gets its marching orders from the legislature. It does nothing that the legislature has not told it or authorized it to do. So it all flows back to the elected officials and the elections. Is that an adequate answer to your question?
What role can citizens play with the PUC? Is there some kind of role public can play?
And the answer to that question is absolutely yes. You know, the PUC is not this mysterious fortress that no one may enter. Everybody has the right to participate in PUC proceedings. You can even intervene and become a full party. If you are a customer of the or a utility that's affected by a particular PUC proceeding, historically the PUC has decided you have standing to intervene, and there's no reason not to. You acquire very few obligations and lots of rights by intervening, but even if you don't intervene, you can file comments and tell the PUC what you think it should do. And the PUC has a very good online virtual file room, so you can keep track of PUC proceedings that are interesting to you. You can even ask the PUC to put you on its courtesy service list, so it will email you things that it decides in cases you're interested in. So it should be, and in fact is, accessible to the public.
And as a follow-up question to that, is the PUC the right place to put the pressure?
Yes, absolutely. When it comes to utility rates, the PUC is the back end of the elephant.
Dan, how do people in towns push or get involved in community power?
Thank you for the question. if I could go back just for a moment to reinforce what Don said, I get several emails a week from the PUC concerning different dockets that I am involved in on behalf of our company. They can get a bit technical, and you need time and some expertise maybe to fully engage. And so one good vehicle for engagement for any citizens who want to be more informed and be supporting meaningful engagement is the organization, the nonprofit Clean Energy New Hampshire, Clean Energy NH, has a lot of members, and they are regularly before the PUC trying to advocate for, I think, the same values that are represented in this room. So I encourage that. If I can also make a brief comment on policy and then speak to community power, just to put in perspective where we are in New Hampshire. So we are the only state in New England that has no greenhouse gas emission reduction goals. Our renewable portfolio standard, the extent to which we seek to transition to renewables, ends at 25% in 2025. Other states have goals of 100% or 80%. Within that 25%, the goal is 0.7% of energy from solar. Most of the renewable power comes from biomass, which is local and renewable, but is also polluting. And hydro is another important source. And as a consequence, we have about 1% of our electricity coming from the sun compared to 20% in Mass, 17% in Vermont, 5%, and it will soon be 10% in Maine because of the pace of growth there. And that is the PUC implementing policies from the legislature. So I think engagement in elections, engagement in the legislative proceedings. There are many bipartisan bills that have been passed that would have moved us much more rapidly forward, dealing with issues like community power, where there's been some movement, fortunately, but in many other areas, bipartisan legislation was vetoed by the current governor, and that, I think, more than any other single factor explains why we are so far behind, and also partly explains why our rates are so high. Community power has been a bright spot where there has been good compromise and some willingness from the governor to allow those efforts to move forward. We have over a dozen towns in New Hampshire that have coalesced to form the Community Power Coalition of New Hampshire. They welcome new town members, so if you're involved with your town, it's something I'm happy to connect you to the coalition. You can bring the possibility of membership forward to your town select board or your city council. And we are seeing good movement on the first phase of community power. We expect the first communities, such as Lebanon, Hanover, Keene, Nashua, these are some of the most active so far. We expect the first ones to begin offering alternative default power to the members of their community, which is very likely to be less expensive than what we get from the utilities. And then in subsequent years, we know many of these communities will seek to create their own local generation portfolios to contract with solar, potentially wind generation, potentially hydro, in order to provide not just cheaper power, but cleaner power that is locally sourced and also brings local investment and jobs. That's a couple years out probably, but the first step of providing cheaper default power from existing generators will start to come next year, and I do encourage you to look up the Community Power Coalition of New Hampshire and encourage your town to join it.
I don't want to leave you out. Have the electric heating assistance programs lost funding, or is that just a rumor?
Have they lost funding? No, but that doesn't mean they won't. I mean, the fuel assistance program is a federal program. Just as you're hearing from the gentleman on either side, policy and elections will decide the fates of some of these programs, but no, they have not lost funding. And in fact, the state program is money pulled out of our state surplus to help with the cost of heating and electric.
And the last question, this came up, that can someone talk about the ISO and what their role is?
Oh man, that really is the back end of the elections. So what you're talking about is ISO New England, which is actually a regional transmission organization. It is a nonprofit organization. It has a couple of important jobs. One of them is it operates the bulk power transmission system. It's actually owned by the region's utilities, but they operate it. And they also oversee the markets through which energy trades at wholesale. And so the source of those monumental prices that you're seeing in your retail electric bills really is the marketplace that's overseen by ISO New England. So it is an enormously powerful and important organization. If you would think it should be transparent and accessible and extremely responsive to the people who ultimately pay for all this stuff, it is the opposite of those things. And man, I just am always out there at the gate of the ISO, with my torch and my pitchfork. I'm going to an ISO New England Board of Directors meeting next week in Providence, Rhode Island, to give those people a piece of my mind. I do want to mention energy efficiency, just to throw that in, because my friend Dan is correct that renewables are better and cheaper than using fossil fuels, but even better than all of that, the cheapest way to meet the next unit of demand for energy is not to use it, to get more work out of the energy we're already using it. In other words, megawatts with an N are cheaper than megawatts with an M. We are dead last, not only in New England, but in the whole Northeast when it comes to energy efficiency. What we do have is available to you at nhsaves.com. We need a lot more of it because there is a lot more to be had that is cost effective. Meaning, it saves the people money who actually use it at their homes and businesses, and it saves everybody money. It is a win-win situation, or as Amory Lovins likes to say, it is the lunch you get paid to eat.
I love that. Thank you so much for these wonderful questions. So to toss it back to our Zoom family here, I know Walter had a question that he wanted to share. So Walter, if you are still there, please unmute and share your question.
Oh, thanks a lot. Thanks a lot. So big picture, the problem we have is that for 40 years now, I guess 50 really, our energy prices are usually very low, but then every once in a while we get a spike, and people are understandably upset about that. But the reason we're still using fossil fuels, even though they are going to make life much worse for future generations through climate change and make life worse for people today through regular pollution, is that by and large, most of the time, they're really cheap. So from a climate standpoint, when they get more expensive, which makes renewables cheaper relatively, that's actually good. But there are obviously two huge problems. One, most people can't afford a rapid and huge increase in energy prices. And two, when these energy price increases in fossil fuels come so quickly and frequently are so transitory, they don't really lead to changes in lifestyle that we need. So, gas got to $5 a gallon, but I didn't really see people stop buying 5,000-pound, 400 horsepower gas cars, and therefore Ford and GM didn't stop making them. So, whereas if you knew that the price of gas was going to go up gradually, literally for the rest of your life, then that would influence decisions. And so there is a policy, carbon fee and dividend, that solves both those problems. First, the carbon fee starts off very low, but it goes up every year. And so anyone making a long-term decision, what kind of car to buy, put solar on the roof, what kind of house to build or buy, will have an incentive to use less fossil fuels, because over the life of that long-term investment, the renewable choice will be cheaper. And this is obviously true for companies as well, even more so, a utility building a new plant. And then the second thing is, if instead of taking the revenue from the carbon fee and just putting it into the vast federal till and spending it in all different ways, you rebate it back to American households exactly per capita in even shares. Kids get half a share, adults get a full share. It actually becomes a progressive economic policy, because the least affluent people use the least energy, and yet they're going to get a rebate based on the average American's use, which is 16 tons of CO2 a year. So the people with private jets and several mansions are going to be paying in a lot more than they get back, the people, living in a modest apartment in Manchester and taking city buses are going to get back a lot more than they put in. But everyone is going to have the same incentive to use fewer fossil fuels. And the fact that everyone will know that this is going up on a schedule every year will mean that the price increases actually do alter behavior. Whereas, people can't react to a doubling or tripling of energy prices in a couple of months. They can't change where they live. They probably can't change what they're driving. All those things. It's really, these periodic spikes aren't doing anything for climate. They're just making people's living standards go down. So I just wondered if your group has looked into this at all. It's there are a bunch of bills at the federal level, which is where it has to happen. There's one in the House that has 95 co-sponsors, which is not nothing. We need more. And in New Hampshire, Annie Custer in District 2 has sponsored it. Chris Pappas in District 1 has not sponsored it. So I just think it's good for people to check it out. You can Google carbon fee and dividend.
Thank you so much.
You'll see it solves a lot of problems. But
Thank you so much, Walter. So give our
thanks for letting me.
yeah, absolutely. So let's give our panelists a chance to respond to that, and then we'll move on to the next groups. Any responses, panelists?
I'm familiar with carbon fee and dividend, and I didn't hear anything that I disagree with or can refute. I think the likelihood that Congress is going to send a carbon fee and dividend bill to the president for his signature anytime in the foreseeable future is very, very low, and so therefore I haven't spent a lot of time working on that particular policy initiative, but it's very well developed, and the arguments for it are quite compelling.
Awesome. Thank you so much, Don. Any other responses? No. Okay.
I have a quick follow-up on that.
Yeah, absolutely. Hold on,
By
Chris.
chance-
Chris.
Am I correct in my understanding that Canada already has enacted a carbon fee and dividend, program of some sort? I don't know the scale.
Yeah, that's correct.
Yeah. Can anyone comment on how that has played out so far? Has it? I mean, we're all familiar with unintended consequences. It certainly sounds good in theory. Do we know how this is working in practice anywhere else in the world?
So any responses to that? And just want to be mindful of the time. We do have, I think, 5 other groups to go through. So if responses can be quick, so we be thoughtful of our other participants.
Yeah, very briefly, it is actually a standard policy mechanism in a lot of other industrialized countries, in Canada and the European Union, and we do see significantly lower carbon intensity across most of those. Of course, Canada is a major producer and exporter of fracked gas, but across the European Union, the amount of carbon pollution per person is substantially lower than here in our wonderful United States, and that is attributed, at least in part, to the use of this mechanism, which almost all economists would strongly favor. It does make a lot of economic sense. It has been politically very challenging. So I think it's one of a number of policy solutions that we ought to be working on, but not the only one, because of how challenging it has been. In the past, it's had bipartisan support. Unfortunately, there's not a lot of bipartisanship in Washington these days.
Ain't that the truth? All right, well, thank you so much for that, for those questions and the responses from our panelists. So, tossing it back to group 2 online, do we have any questions from group 2 and anything that folks would like to share? And again, I'll just remind folks that we are running a little bit short on time, and I know we're going to be losing Don soon because his students also need his time and not just us community members and advocates. So let's be sure if you want to prioritize questions to Don, and just want to make sure that folks don't also have, if you have any questions for Leah as well, I'm going to go ahead and toss it to group 2 online.
I think that was the group I was in, and we actually struggled to get to actual questions, so we're off the hook there. And just briefly, our group had kind of a variety of people. Some had solar panels and things, some didn't have quite enough, and then some of us also are struggling with those prices. Some of the comments on what we thought we'd like to see done was number one was stand up to Eversource, because Eversource treats New Hampshire differently than other states like Massachusetts because of the legislative atmosphere. But the other thing that we talked about was income eligibility isn't, high enough for the subsidies for many of us. And also, we'd also like to see better programs for low income people so that they can actually get those renewables and help their pocketbooks out, but also the environment at the same time. And so if anybody has any information on those 2 or 3 items, we'd love to hear about that.
The one thing I just wanted to add, I talked a lot about fuel and electric assistance, but the other program Community Action offers is a weatherization program. And we have one of the oldest housing markets in the country, and that means energy inefficiency. And so one of the things that, fuel assistance, electric assistance helps in the short term, weatherization absolutely helps pocketbooks and environment in the long term. So just to add that. Thanks. Thank you so much, Leah. And I actually just have a quick question before I call on Group 3 here in person. So for folks who are not in the Belknap, Merrimack counties, can you share a little bit about caps and, are there other caps in other counties? Just if folks live elsewhere, where can they go?
Sure. If you go to capnh.org, you'll see all of the community action programs across the state. Community action is across the vast majority of the country, and we are the agencies helping with everything but animals is often what we say. With food insecurity, with fuel and electric assistance, with the WIC program and the Head Start program and the Meals on Wheels program. A lot of those local, federal, state programs are run by community action agencies. So capnh.org, and if you put in your town, you'll figure out which of the 5 agencies in the state serves your area.
Wonderful, thank you so much. So I'm going to toss it over to Group 3. We're going to keep this going. Any reflections or questions from Group 3? I'm going to go back and forth. Any questions? Lisa, all right, toss it over to Sam.
Hey y'all, one quick question. It's just 100,000 people are spending way more money on energy. Who benefits from the change? Who benefits from the high rates?
Good question. Money's gotta go somewhere.
Well, I can tell you that the money is going to the companies that win the bidding process to provide default energy service to our utilities. So it's not really Eversource, Unitil, Liberty, or the electric co-op that are benefiting. It's really the wholesale energy providers like NextEra and Constellation are the 2 companies that won the bid for Eversource's load. So if you want to scrutinize a company and look at what their shareholders are getting and what their executives are getting, those are the companies to really zero in on, I think.
Awesome. Thank you very much, Don. And so if one more question from Group 3.
Thank you. Our discussion at our table revolved a lot about supply, where it comes from, how it's priced, how it's generated, and a little bit of discussion about how we actually got here from the restructuring of the electric utility industries in the 1990s. So I think what I can offer is that I think this group would be really good to put together a workshop, an on-the-ground workshop, which will educate people in the community in terms of how to actually shop for energy. Where, as Don was mentioning, who the various vendors are that produce the electricity, what's their markup, how do they actually operate. So I think it would be really beneficial for this group and for people who are looking for this information to have an on-the-ground workshop. And that might be the most productive thing that I see coming out of this session tonight. So thank you.
Thank you so much, Joe. And yeah, please.
I love that we're sort of pulling back layers of the onion here and looking at supply, and Don was right to bring up ISO, Independent System Operator, which governs our wholesale market. Anyone interested in just starting to educate yourself, check out the app ISO to go. And right now I'm looking at the wholesale electricity costs in New England across all of our 6 states. I'm also looking at the current fuel mix, the current supply. Right now it's 50% fracked gas, 28% nuclear, 12% renewables. Again, that's a lot of biomass still, and then also 10% hydro. So you can check that out, and there's a lot of digging one can do great resources also from the U.S. Energy Information Administration, which gives you price data going back decades and exact percent of fuel sources, different generators, where they're located, and on and on. There's some great resources out there.
Awesome, thank you so much, Dan. And actually, very quick question to our panelists, perhaps, so you could share this with us. Where, if people did want to change their supplier, where would they go? You know, is there an easy resource that people can go to change their energy suppliers?
Energy.nh.gov is the State Department of Energy website, and there is in one of their pull-down menus a place that you can go to find the competitive energy suppliers and compare their prices. It varies by which utilities service territory you live in. So yeah, that's where to go.
Thank you so much. All right, so keeping it moving. I know we're probably going to lose Don soon, but we will, enjoy him while he's here. So we are on to group number, I believe, did I say group 3 online?
Hey, yeah.
Yeah, right. Yeah, group 3.
I'm Lisa. I'm with 350 New Hampshire. I use she, her pronouns. We had some short questions, and one of them might have been answered in our own chat. I did some Googling off to the side. That question was, is there a certain time period where heat and electricity can't be shut off due to the time of year, like in the winter? And I'm not sure what year I have here, but I have November 15th to March 31. An electric utility may not disconnect customer service at certain levels. It depends what type of electricity or gas you're getting, but it's either under $225, under $125, or under $450. For some of these people, that's just 1 month. So any response to how to make sure people kept the lights on and have heat this winter?
Well, let me just respond to that by saying that is a correct statement about the rules that apply to disconnections in the winter. There are those limitations in place starting on November 15th, lasting through the end of March. I strongly urge everybody, if you get a disconnection notice from your utility, pick up the phone and call them. Those notices are scary, but at least one of the big utilities, I'm not going to mention its name, but its initials are Eversource, sends out disconnection notice to customers just to get you to call them. They do not actually intend to disconnect you. The utilities don't like the horrible publicity they get when they disconnect people in the dead of winter. But they do need to get your attention. There are services and help available to you. You have paid for those things. So do not be afraid or ashamed or reluctant to expect or demand or ask for your right to participate in those programs. Eversource has an arrearage management program, so they'll actually forgive some of your past due bill, but you have to call them and talk to them. I'm not here to defend Eversource, but I am here to say that you are better off engaging with them than ignoring them. And that goes for Liberty, Unitil, and the Electric Co-op as well.
Thank you so much, Don. And just actually, for a quick follow-up, I know we still have folks online, but maybe for Leah, is there something like if folks are struggling maybe with now calling these energy companies to like kind of take advantage of some of these programs, is there anything that community action programs can help with in terms of supporting people to reach out to to the energy companies, or is there some sort of resource or someone that they could call maybe just to get, some extra support?
Sure. So we have heard some challenging stories in terms of trying to get in touch with some of the utility companies, and so if you've got a disconnect notice, if someone is really struggling, contact your local community action program. There are local resource centers across the state, and there are some programs that can assist. Like just today, we heard from a woman who's stage 4 cancer and has a disconnect notice, and we have some programs that we can help with. So absolutely, if someone's really struggling, contact your community action program, and someone hopefully can assist.
Awesome, thank you so much. So then back to group 3, any other questions or reflections before we keep it moving?
Is there any way to get a prediction of how the 6-month review will result in rate changes? Is that just the releases every 6 months, or can we have any prediction that it's going to go up further?
I do own a crystal ball. You know, everybody always says, well, I don't have a crystal ball. I actually do have one. And there is some possibility, I would say, that you'll see a modest decline. Why is that? Well, because the next 6-month period that starts, I think, in February has the summer in it. And in general, worldwide, energy prices are lower in the summer, at least in the northern hemisphere, than they are in the winter. So, you know, the real question is, what will the prices look like 1 year from now as we gear up to go through yet another super cold, harsh winter? And the answer is, I guess my crystal ball starts to get a little foggy when I get to that point.
Just one quick,
yeah.
Sorry, a quick additional comment. The reason, I think some context may be interesting, the reason we do historically see peaking rates in the winter is because we are so reliant on fracked gas, which we use both to heat and generate electricity. So as we move away toward energy efficiency and renewable sources, that there should be a leveling off. And I have to put a plug into wind. It's not my industry, but it sure is a big part of the future. Offshore wind has peaking generation in the winter months and at nighttime, so an ideal complement to solar expansion. And it is possible for New England to be powered substantially, if not entirely, with the help of green hydrogen and a lot of battery storage with these cheap renewable sources.
Thank you so much, Dan and Don. And it looks like we are having a little bit of technical difficulty, so we're working hard to bring back our Zoom family so we can keep the questions coming. But let's finish up with the folks in the room. For now, I think we are on our final group 4. Do we have a group 4? Are you all group 4? Yes. All right, wonderful. Group 4, any questions or comments that you'd like to share with our panelists?
I think like all of the questions were answered.
No, you're good? Okay. All right, awesome. Then while our tech team is working to bring back our Zoom family, I know we have a couple more questions. I'll talk to Maria and then I'll ask a few that I have.
Yeah, I think one of the questions we forgot to ask is, you mentioned about CSA and then the program similar with solar, and I just wonder if you have any information or how can we start it? Because I know you've been doing a lot of projects in my town and around my town that benefit a lot of the companies. But I would like to see people who already have solar panels but they're not producing enough get a benefit from that.
Thank you. Great question. Love the chance to talk just a little bit about that future that I alluded to.
Recording in progress.
At the beginning, and hopefully they're coming back online. So, just today, we got to cut the ribbon on a 4.7 megawatt solar project in one of the main cities, South Portland, Maine, that is now increasingly routine. We're doing a lot of community solar farms there where hundreds of members own their little share of a community solar farm, and they get credits every month on their electric bill. And if they've got a big family with a lot of electricity consumption, they buy 2 or 3 shares. If they're a small family, they buy a single share, what have you. So the model is tried and true, has been done in a lot of other states, but unfortunately, because of some of the many vetoes I alluded to, has been very difficult to scale up in New Hampshire. One bright spot has been there are some programs specific to low and moderate income folks. And so one of our highest priorities as a company, as a B Corp, is to really start to deploy those programs. There's an LMI adder where the net metering value for projects delivering power to low and moderate income families, and that's defined as folks with incomes up to 3 times the federal poverty line, so about $80,000 per family of 4. Those individuals can have that enhanced value on the net metering value of generation from a community solar farm. We are committed, starting next year, to finally bring these projects forward, as well as more traditional community solar farms, which aren't connected to one's income, but where the individual members can actually own a share. So the 2 models, in brief, are those owned by members, and then those financed by impact investors, but where the users of the power receiving those additional credits are low-income folks. We are working with housing authorities and affordable housing providers. We've built dozens of projects for Keene Housing in Avesta and Lakes Region developers and others, and we are eager to do more of those projects, but we do need to make it available to the general public. If we, based on what happens on November 8th, can elect a majority that would raise the net metering cap from this artificially low 1 megawatt up to 5 megawatts, like all the neighboring states, the economies of scale allow these projects to really start to come online. So that's where all of our action as voters, as citizens, matters a lot. Even though under the current constraints, my company at least is committed to starting to serve this market. So that will be a big priority for us next year, and we'll try to spread the word about how folks can be members.
Awesome, thank you so much, Dan. So I know, again, we are running short on time. There's never enough of that. But I want to just toss it back to our group 4. One question coming in, and I also want to remind folks that Don will be leaving us very shortly, so if there are questions that you would like focused to him, please prioritize that.
Thanks, Grace. I really appreciate it. I think to Dan, you touched on it, net metering. When I came to this state, it was super exciting. It was super close to being passed. Maybe if all y'all could maybe give your perspective on net metering and maybe reinvigorize the folks in here on why it's important and what it could be doing in the future.
I used to say that the secret to my success as consumer advocate was avoiding any public discussion of net metering. But actually, I've changed my stance radically in the last few weeks because we're just receiving the results of a big value of distributed energy resources study that was sponsored by the Department of Energy. And it reveals that there would be, if we just keep up with the net metering scheme that we have now, very little in the way of so-called cross-subsidization. So, we worry about the solar haves being subsidized by the solar have-nots in some unfair and unreasonable way. It turns out that that is a mythic concern, that in fact, if we stick with net metering, the value to the people who do it is so great. Their bills go down by like 92% between now and 2035, and everybody else's bills go up by about 1%. So that's a trivial amount, I think, of cross-subsidization, and it just means that everybody should listen to Dan and jump on board with net metering opportunities that don't require you to have a big backyard or a south-facing or a west-facing roof. So I really do think, I've come around to this way of thinking quite strongly just in the last few weeks that net metering plays a really important role in the future of energy here in New Hampshire. As does all distributed generation. The more energy we can produce at or near the place where it's used, the better off we're all going to be.
For anyone who wants to stay on, maybe not tonight, but have a lengthy discussion about the analysis, it's pretty fascinating stuff, at least if you're sort of a nerd like me. But I do have to add just one note, because it's been a really big and I would argue distracting debate over these years. We've heard from the corner office that net metering produces this massive cost shift where, as Don just said, the solar have-nots subsidize those with solar. The 1% so-called cost shift that this study found is using the most unrealistically conservative assumptions, assigning no value to the environmental benefits that are known to result from the transition. We reduce hundreds of lives a year and cost billions of dollars in lost economic activity because of the pollution that comes from our existing energy infrastructure from fossil fuels. And it does not look at storage, which extends the benefits of distributed renewables, such as keeping that cheap, clean daytime solar power useful into the evening. So the numbers actually paint a very exciting picture about the future, and I think provide the empirical basis that hopefully our leaders will take seriously in allowing net metering to expand. That will allow us to finally gain some ground while adding many millions of dollars of local investment and lots of new local jobs and all the rest. Obviously, I'm biased, but I do want to dig into those numbers and happy to share more. It's pretty exciting what we're learning.
Awesome, thank you so much. And so I know we've reached all the groups here in person, and there's quite a few questions that are coming in through the chat. So I'd like to open it up to the last two groups, as well as any of the questions that were coming up through the chat. Any of our moderators want to flag those. So why don't we go ahead with group 4 and 5, and then open it up to chat questions.
So the moderators of group 4 and 5 have left. So if you were in one of those groups, I have the questions written down, but I would encourage you to ask them yourselves, since you will probably do a better job than I will. So I would encourage the group 4 and 5 people to unmute if you want. Okay. If not, I do have, Bruce, were you unmuting just then?
Yes, I did.
I'm sorry, go ahead.
I think the big question that I had is, how did we get into this situation? How do we get out of it so that we don't fall into the same traps that we have? And I have a feeling it must be through who we elect. So everyone should do the research as far as who they vote for this next election cycle. Thank you.
Just to quickly respond to that, we will be closing with some actions that folks can take that answer some of that, but if our panelists have any response to that, we certainly want to make sure that they can share. But we will be sure to, end the night with some very specific actions that people can take to share now why this is a problem, as well as advocating in the future to make sure that we can lower these costs. Any other questions or any other questions from our group in Zoom world?
I don't know if the consumer advocate really touched on this. I think he alluded in the beginning that there were some negative possibilities from switching to one of the other suppliers, and I just wondered if he might comment on what he means by that.
Sure. So if you switch to a competitive supplier, you are going to end up making a commitment for an extended period. So the competitive suppliers are all offering plans that last a minimum of a year, I think. And so what you trade is some rate discount for locking in a price for an extended period of time. So that isn't necessarily a bad thing to do, but you have to read the fine print about what the penalty is for backing out of the contract. I just did the math on the one that I put out on the table here, and you save enough money in 2 months on a typical electric bill to be able to afford the $100 fee you would pay if you decide you want to back out of the contract later on if the electric rates go down. The other thing you have to be really careful about is what happens at the end of the rate period you agree to, because what the competitive suppliers are doing is they're giving you a teaser rate, and then if you do nothing at the end of the rate period, they put you on their worst rate, which is going to be even worse than the default energy service rate. So you're committing yourself to a certain amount of vigilance if you migrate into the competitive supply universe. But if you're willing to be that vigilant, it is a good idea. I think ultimately the answer is community power aggregation. People need a trusted agent. They don't want to sit around and worry all the time about where their energy is coming from and how much they're using and when they're using it. That's just, people need to live their lives or enjoy their retirements or raise their kids. So that is why it is a good idea to get your municipality to be the bulk buyer for electricity for everybody in town, unless you opt out. It's just a great idea, and I really think 2023 is going to be the year of community power in New Hampshire.
Very quickly, I use a competitor, and I agree with everything that Dawn said. You have to do your research on these companies. I research them, I follow all the fine print, and you have to look. I've changed from one company to another, so I've had 2 different companies. So just do the research and look at their consumer ratings.
Thanks, Anne. That's great advice. More questions from our Zoom group?
We're back. Does anybody know about, there was rumor of a rebate, and it seems like that $100 one that Governor Sununu talked about when these rate hikes were released is not happening. But is there any sort of rebate maybe middle and low income dwellings can get that's going to be from the state itself?
So the $100 that Governor Sununu initially talked about is what has morphed into the current state program. And so it is a program that you have to apply for, but it is for more median income households. So for a household of 4, up to about $93,500, you're eligible. And that's up to $650. I understand the $100 sort of went away, but it became this state program for electric and heat assistance.
What is that program called? Just to
It is the State Emergency Fuel Assistance Program and the State Supplemental Electric Benefit Program. And the way you apply to those programs is to apply to fuel or electric assistance. It's the same process. And what we are finding is some people are applying for the state program and are delighted to find that they actually qualify for the annual fuel and electric assistance program, because we say low income, but the rate, what low income means is different for every program. And so for a house of 4, just under $75,000 annually is actually eligible for the fuel and electric assistance program. So whether it's the state program or our always existing program, you can apply through Community Action Program.
Wonderful, thank you so much. Any other questions? Maybe we'll take 1 or 2 more, and if there are more questions that are coming up, we can add that, we can share that with our panelists, but just want to be mindful of the time as we close out on the 8 o'clock hour. So 1 or 2 more questions, and then we will move on to actions. Anything from our Zoom family?
Yes, I'd like to add something, if that's okay.
Yes, please.
Just to add to the precautions, if you are getting your electricity from a competitive supplier, and if you are also in a community that will be starting community power, you will not be automatically enrolled in community power if you are on a competitive supplier. So once that starts in your community, you will have to actively opt in. So that's just another thing to know.
Wonderful, thank you so much for that comment. So thank you all for your questions, for your comments, for your information. Many thanks to our panelists. Can we just give them a quick round of applause for joining us this evening and sharing invaluable. And so to close us out, and again, for those who still have burning questions, please do put them in the chat. We will collect them, we will get those answers, and we will share a follow-up email after this event. But to close this, yes?
Can I make one quick comment before we toss it to these guys?
So we're tossing into actions. Can you save that comment and give it to us after? Okay, awesome. Thank you, Chris. So we'll collect it, we'll share. Sure. It's not going to just stop here, people, because the work doesn't stop here. So I'm going to give it to, so thank you for our panelists. We're going to let them go, return to their evening. But we're going to close out with Erica Perez, who's going to share some actions that we can take now and actions that we can take for the future so that we can make sure this doesn't keep happening to our communities.
Absolutely, thank you, Grace. So some of the things that we can do is right now, there's about to be an election. There's still time to approach candidates. We can get them on camera and we can ask them specific questions. There we go. Questions like, will you go on record to ask the PUC to reverse its decision to allow electric companies to increase its rates by 100% or more? Will you vote for rate caps that would prohibit utility companies from increasing rates by 100% while enjoying record profits? Will you vote to diversify New Hampshire's energy resources to include more renewable energy and less dependence on fossil fuels? And you can find these questions outside on the table. You can also share on social media, especially Twitter, tag our individual orgs, and also New Hampshire Renews at RenewsNH, and use the hashtag #StopNHUtilityHikes. We will be following up with people via email. There's going to be another meeting on November 16th, so mark your calendars. And yeah, don't forget to pick up the information outside on the table. And you could speak from the next event. You can also write to the governor or call. The phone number is 603-271-7676. You could write to the PUC. You could write LTEs to your local paper. And you could tweet at the governor using the hashtag #StopNHUtilityHikes. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Erica. And like Erica said, we will be following up after this meeting to all of our participants with some of the resources that we have collected, that our panelists have shared with us, as well as more information, again, like she said, of the follow-up community meeting that we will have to continue this work together. So I just want to thank you all of you who joined us virtually, all of you who drove out here, spent your evening with us in person. We really do appreciate you connecting with us. It is so important that we stay connected because these issues only change when we know about it and we know what to do about it. So many thanks to our panelists. Thank you for coming. If you haven't gotten any information, please grab some sheets before you go and have a wonderful evening, and we will see you all soon.
Awesome job, Grace.
Recording.